of what the goal is, what it's going to take to accomplish that goal, and what you're hoping to deliver to the grantor at the end of the project is really important before you start. Another piece of advice with that is getting the facts. So I strongly suggest that you look up other projects that are similar to what you are wanting to do and see what those projects were able to deliver through their process, how they went about achieving those goals, and what their financial overall picture looked like in the end if you are able to find projects similar to yours. The next thing you're going to want to identify is who is your audience. So this is really important. Once you have a project in mind and you start to go looking for potential funders or grants, you're going to want to know as you research those companies or those opportunities, who they are. So knowing what projects they've funded in the past, understanding the company or entity's culture, what it is they're hoping to accomplish is really important when you go to sit down and write your grant. It helps tailor your application towards showing them how funding your project will help them to accomplish their goals as well. You're going to want to look for entities that have goals and vested interests similar to yours and your project's goals. And you're going to want to, again, as you work through that application, make sure you're tailoring your application to who you are asking money from. That's really important. And along with knowing your audience, another really big asset to grant writing is collaboration. Grant funders really like to see partnerships, entities with common interests coming together for bigger picture goals. That can be as simple as referencing that another project has been successful in the area that you're looking to set your goals. All of that is going to help increase your eligibility and really help to support your grant application when you submit it to a grantor. The next big question we have when we sit down to write a grant is, how are we going to accomplish our goals? And how are you going to accomplish your grant application itself? So along with researching the companies and the entities that you're asking for funding from, you're also going to want to pull the grant application down and read through their mission statement, read through their objectives if they have them, read through the grant application in general, and look for things like, what voice do they write in? What kind of vocabulary do they use? What style is their writing? Do they speak in terms of I, you, they? Or when they refer to Pepsi, do they call it soda, pop, or Coke? And mirror those same terminology in your grant application. We call this the familiarity effect. And it's really important that you show them that you took an interest in them as a company, and that you kind of resort back to that, we align with our goals and our applications. Other important things to keep in mind is to be clear. Make sure that you're using short, concise sentences that get your point across, and you're taking out any filler words or vocabulary that don't add to the purpose of your application. A lot of applications are limited in their overall word count when you're submitting your summaries, explanations, things of that nature. So make sure you're really paying attention to how you approach your sentences, how you approach utilizing that word count to the fullest. Be concise. Again, that goes back to being clear they're very well related, making sure that your sentences are very direct to the point and add extra emphasis when needed, but take out fillers when they're not needed. And be compelling. Believe in your project. When you write, make sure that comes across, that you're passionate about what you're doing. You believe you're the best person for their funding. Don't be afraid or be shy about showing that you are very confident in what you're presenting as a project and as an application. Again, we go back to the formatting. So making sure in the application, a lot of times they will specify what kind of font, what kind of text sizing, overall style is required in order to apply, or that they would like to see in your application. If for some reason they don't outline those things, the suggestion would be to look at what they're using in their actual application materials, and again, mirror or mimic it. So if they're using bold italic font in their application, go ahead and use the same when you write your application back to them. And that goes back to the mirror exposure effect and showing them that you are paying attention to what's important to them. Another big thing to pay attention to is grammar. So when we sit down, this takes a lot of time to write these grants. We put a lot of effort into them, into researching our goals, into actually writing the application summaries, budgets, and things of that nature. So we really want to be paying attention to even the minor details of grammar, spelling errors, things like that. You just don't want to put in all of that time and have an avoidable mistake. So utilize your resources. There's a lot of resources within Microsoft Word and online. Another big resource that I highly suggest is a really well thought through review process. It's suggested that you have within your district or within your group a 2 to 3 step review process. So whether that be you write the first draft and you send it to a board member, and then you send it to a second board member or another employee within your office, have at least 2 or 3 people review that application before you feel like you have the final draft that you want to submit. And then in addition to that, it's suggested most grantors or granting entities will allow you, if you reach out to them within a timely manner, to send your application ahead of time for them to pre-review and look over and make sure there aren't any mistakes that they catch for you. So I highly suggest you make that relationship with a granting company or entity. Ask them to do that review process if you are able. It just adds another step to make sure that there are no avoidable mistakes within your application. And again, it makes you a familiar face when your application crosses their desk later on within the actual competitive process. So making sure you're utilizing those resources. And again, Microsoft Word has a lot of really great resources within it. One of them is readability. So the readability application looks very similar to this. It'll give you your word count. It'll also tell you how easily your application can be read. So is it an application to a general entity that just needs to be very clear and concise and easy to read? Or are you applying to something more specific where you need to talk at kind of a higher, more specific, maybe even a scientific level with your grant funding entity? So those are things to kind of pay attention to. And again, this is a really great resource for all of that. And then the very last thing to think about is, why do we write grants, right? Why are we asking for the money? And this goes back to having that passion and that belief that your project is important and conveying that to the granting entity that I'm the best person to fund today. So know your own mission statement. Make sure you know the mission statement of who you're applying for funding from. Know your project goals, and really kind of convey that passion for what you're doing when you're writing the grants. So in general, writing is a very creative process. When we look at grants, we're really wanting to mirror that application, but at the same time, you want to get across that you're really passionate and you really believe in what it is you're putting forth as far as a project. And this kind of just sums it up. Again, one of the biggest things we can do is ask for feedback. So I highly suggest, whether or not you do or do not get granted funding from an entity, once that application competitive process has come complete, I would reach out to them and ask for that feedback. How did my application look? Are there ways it could be stronger? All of that kind of plays into that growth and helping you for the next grant application that you submit. And that is the end of my presentation. So I guess I'll open it up to any questions you guys have.
Abby, do you have any other sources that go into more detail as folks are working through a grant project, whether it, no matter who they might be going through? Is there anything in general that people can fall back on?
I haven't found a great website as far as grant writing training yet. I have been kind of trying to weed through some of the online resources there. So as those come up, I will certainly share them with the districts and share them on our district operations page. CSCB has a few self quizzes that I can post on there as well, as far as recognizing difference in voice and grammar and kind of going through the match process and how to come up with those aspects as well.
Perfect. I will make this available, and maybe we can share those links with the video once it's available and get that out to all of the districts. Does anybody else have any questions for Abby? Don't be shy. Let's see, we have in chat, we have from Kristen Rockford. Do you have any advice on how to outline deliverables?
It's a great question, Kristen. And really, there isn't a one size fits all when it comes to the deliverables. One of the biggest suggestions is numbers, having some kind of way. I know we talk a lot with the matching grants about educational projects, and how do we really put that into a deliverable picture that shows an actual tangible outcome for those grants. And you have to start getting creative with certain projects, and that sometimes it's as simple as a survey, asking landowners how much land they own, what their intention after a conference is. Are they going to go home and think about adding practices to their lands? Follow-up surveys, phone calls, things like that can add value in the terms of tangible numbers. But when it really comes down to grants and funding, I think the biggest advice for that particular area is tangible data, some way to transform your project into something that can be put in a statistical way or a way that is easily interpreted in the future.
Perfect. If anyone else wants to ask a question, you can either raise your hand and I will unmute you or ask you to unmute yourself, or you can put your questions in the chat. And Abby, can you explain as far as the matching grants? Do you want to talk a little bit about that, or?
Sure, I can. So CSCB, or the Colorado State Conservation Board, offers what we call a matching grant program. Those applications come out usually sometime around April, May, and are due in July of every year. That grant program is open to districts to apply for up to $25,000 in matching grant funding. It is a 1-to-1 match. So for every dollar that you are granted throughout the grant, you do have to match that $1. However, that 1-to-1 match can be split 50% cash match and 50% in-kind match. So that's kind of the basis of that grant program. It's really meant for on-the-ground conservation, education, cost share with landowners. It's really used for a wide variety of things. And a lot of information can be found as far as projects and grant outlines and things like that on our district operations website. This year we were able to fund quite a few projects. We funded 26 projects in total, which is very exciting for the program, and kind of see where things go from there.
That sounds great. And I wanted to ask you, on the CSCB website, is there any section in there that they should go to or they can reference?
Yes, so there is an entire grant sub page on our district operations website, and I can add that in the link in here in just a second. There are multiple facets to that. So that shows our DCT, or District Conservation Technician program, the matching grant program, the technology or computer matching grant program, as well as a directory page for outside grant opportunities as they come through our desk. We add them on there that the districts may be able to apply for monies from other entities other than CSCB. So there's a few resources on there, and I will add today's slideshow as well as those self quizzes and things to the district operations site as well. And I will send that to Bobby so she can get it out to all of you.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much. And it looks like Raquel posted one of those links for everyone if you want to grab that out of the chat. Are there any other questions for Abby? We can't let her off the hook this easy. Are there any questions or comments for myself or Abby on anything that we could bring to you in the future, maybe a little bit more detailed, involving grants or anything else that you can think of that you would like to see for future training? We do have one question here. Hold on just a second. Oh, somebody had their hand up, but they took it down. Kristen is asking, what are the deadlines for the 2022 matching grant program?
So Kristen, the 2022 calendar year program has closed. There will be a new round of matching grants. The applications will come out again around early May, usually, for the calendar year 2023, and those will be due in July of next year. You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions for Abby or comments on what you would like to see for further training in regard to grant writing? Brett Moore is asking, what are some common grants the CDs apply for, and what are some that maybe not everyone has heard of?
That's some great questions, Brett. I don't know that I have super awesome answers for you. I know the matching grants are very common. Also, the Colorado State Water Conservation Board has some pretty robust grant programs that a lot of conservation districts apply for and take advantage of. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head some that are maybe not so common, but there are quite a few. If you go to the district operations site, those outside grant opportunities, there's quite a few, some through NRCS and other entities that I really hadn't heard of until we went looking. So I think there's probably, if you asked the district managers, that you get a better answer to that question than from me. And it looks like Vanessa asked how many DCTs are there in Colorado. So we have 18 participating districts in calendar year 2021, and that number is up to 20 participating districts in calendar year 2022. And we have 21 DCTs in calendar year 2021, and we are going to have 23 DCTs in calendar year 2022. You're very welcome.
And Abby, are there still any grant opportunities that are available through CDA to the district through all of the stimulus funding?
I believe that they have all closed. The soil health grants closed in September, and I believe that they are in the final review process of the drought resiliency grants that came through that stimulus funding.
Okay. So I assume if there's any extra, they might open that back up, or?
That would be a great question for Les Owen. Okay. I'm not 100% sure what their thought process is or how many applications they've gotten through those programs at this time.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions for Abby? All right, well, seeing none, Abby, I just want to thank you so much for taking time to be with us today, and I want to thank everybody who's on with us today, for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. And hopefully this is just the beginning of some extra training that CACD can help bring forth in the future. And please reach out to me with any ideas for further training, or if you think of, as soon as we end the session here today, if you think of questions for Abby, please feel free to get those over to me, and I'll make sure that we get those to Abby and get you the answers that you're looking for. Other than that, Abby, do you have anything else that you would like to say?
Thank you all for taking the time out to join us today. And if you, again, reiterating what Bobby said, if you have suggestions for future trainings or anything along those lines, feel free to reach out.